taking the sensibility of Edgar Wright before I even knew what he wanted to do with it and applying it to that material. I knew in an instant that this could be quite a combustible combination.
The screenplay for a film is essentially the blueprint for the whole project. This is where the world, the characters and story are born from. From there, many people and their respective departments get their hands on the script and adapt it in their own way to help bring the screenplay to life. Most notably, the director will have a vision to visualize the writer's narrative. Screenplays can be adapted in an infinite number of ways, but there are some scripts which have such a strong visual identity that to stare into a different visual style would be a significant disservice to the narrative. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is such a script. Back in 2005, Michael Bacall with director-writer Edgar Wright was brought on to write the screenplay for Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, an adaptation of a popular manga series which released in the theaters in 2010. The film was a commercial bomb, but a critical hit, and over the years the film became a cult classic. 11 years later, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World still remains hugely popular and important for its fans, so much so that the cast and director recorded a live table read to celebrate the film's 10th anniversary. The film itself is loved for its great cast, comic book visual style, and the countless pop culture references. Even with Edgar Wright's brand of snappy editing and energetic pacing, it is interesting to see how much of the now iconic visual style actually came from an early draft of the screenplay written by Bacall. When writing a story through an observed visual style, it is best to introduce your audience to that concept as early as possible. Bacall manages to achieve this on the second page of the screenplay, where the titular Scott recounts how he met his new girlfriend Knives. The brilliance of using the non-diegetic fact box and stars in Knives' eyes is that it is not just style, it has substance too. On a surface level, these visual effects let the audience know what kind of film they are in for. A persuasive, loose, tongue-in-cheek journey with a transitionary period in the hero's life, the people, and the world around him. They also give the audience an idea of the characters and their characteristics. The fact box gives us some basic information about the protagonist, and the stars show Knives' adoration for Scott. But Bacall does not stop there, since the scene is an anecdote from Scott telling his friends how he and Knives met. The over-the-top style tries to make himself look stoic and quote-unquote cool, when in fact this tells us he is big-headed and immature. With the story's unique style introduced, Bacall slowly dials up the absurdity over the next 30 pages, leading to Scott and Ramona's kissing scene. The scene emphasizes how the unconventional visual style is out of the ordinary for showing us Scott's internal thoughts and feelings. The fantasy sex bob-omb playing in the background is amusing, but it also feeds into Scott's narcissism, getting intimate with the girl out of his league in front of his friends. Scott is so narcissist, even his fantasy self gives him a thumb of approval. Having the band play something akin to a Barry White track hammers home how much of a teenage boy's fantasy the whole situation is. Bacall can push the absurdity here because he's already established the screenplay's tone and style to the audience early on, catering towards a pretty specific demographic, that is, young adults who are familiar with pop culture references. Employing such approach will, of course, cause some problems, most notably for producers and studio executives who will be reading the screenplay and hopefully financing the project. The prominent and most frequent references throughout the screenplay are those from video games, but not everyone is a gamer. Having a hero pose is pretty self-explanatory, but having a hero pose that is akin to character poses from the Street Fighter video games might alienate some readers, and could definitely turn off those who you are trying to squeeze some money out of. This reference does, however, cater directly towards the intended audience demographic. It is clear that Bacall understands he's writing with a specific audience in mind, but that he also needs to make the screenplay understandable for an executive.
Stop, Pilgrim!
What did you do with my sister?
So, what can I get you?
Again, Bacall achieves several things within a single page. Having a character suddenly have half of their dialogue bleeped out will throw audiences off, but the film has already established its tone and style, so the audience is prepared for each peculiar and strange element. The bleeping then feeds into Scott asking how Julie is doing that. The meta-humor is just right for the young adult audience Bacall is aiming to please, but it also erases any concerns from executives about the screenplay suddenly having a slew of F-bombs, which would have certainly made Scott Pilgrim vs. the World an R-rated feature. As the screenplay goes on, the visual style starts to incorporate other characters' arcs while still remaining somewhat within Scott's viewpoint. This mostly comes in the form of the fun fact box as seen here, with knives at different points within the screenplay. At this point in the screenplay, Scott has dumped knives to be with Ramona, and from the minimal information in the text box, we know that she's not of much interest to him anymore. Later on, she has more characteristics in her fact box. Coming from Scott's viewpoint, the facts are not exactly positive, but it still nonetheless adds to her journey and character arc. Bacall changes the fact box several times for knives throughout the screenplay, but also does the same for most of the main cast. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World feeds its unique style into the core of the story and its characters. Michael Bacall has written a script that oozes with style, but keeps the story's substance. He manages to establish how Scott's world functions early on to ease audiences in, but each visual flair has a technical use that advances the character arcs and the narrative. The screenplay is perfect for Edgar Wright and his intelligent comedic style, with the film's popularity 11 years later only proving how much of a perfect marriage that pairing was.